Howdy, neighbors. Christopher Henry here with Noya Mountain Music and the Monroe Legacy Workshop. What you're about to see is the conversation part with our special guest, Glen Duncan, an amazing fiddle player that was one of the best bluegrass boys of all time. And he's sharing a lot of great stories, memories, and insider information windows into Monroe's psyche and the way he led the band and the way he thought about music. He studied it as much as anyone ever has. And so, if you'd like to visit glenduncan.com, you can check out some of Glen's music there. Please also visit Noya Mountain Music if you'd like some more information about learning to play Monroe-style mandolin or, guitar, banjo, different things. And then also, you can join these workshops, which are every other Thursday. And if you want to do a little something to help the channel here, if you would like and subscribe, that'd be fantastic. Well, maybe fantastic's a little bit over the top, but it'll be much appreciated. And you can share this video if you'd like to. So here we go with the conversation with Glen Duncan. Here is Mr. Glen Duncan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Glen. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing great. Really good to see you. Uh,
Yeah.
and where are you living these days?
I live outside of Nashville, Gallatin, Tennessee. I've been here, let's see, I've been in Gallatin almost 40 years
Wow.
and been right here. I bought this house 31 years ago. And
Beautiful.
it was built the same year I was born.
Wow. No
Yeah,
kidding.
what a coincidence. Yeah. Yeah,
That's
1955.
Well, wow. Yeah. So I just appreciate you so much joining us here and have
Oh yeah.
admired your musicianship and energy
Well,
and sense of
thank you.
humor
I
and
appreciate that.
and all the wonderful things you have added to bluegrass culture in such a
Oh,
great way.
man.
And if it's okay, we'd love to pick your brain a little bit with regards
Absolutely.
to the world of Monroe.
Yeah,
So
boy.
so how did you get into the music?
Well, I was born and raised in Columbus, Indiana, and so and then I was about 25 miles, maybe something like that, from Bean Blossom.
Oh
So
wow, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So my whole life, I knew Bill Monroe my whole life. I never knew a time that I did not know Bill Monroe, and my dad actually played the Brown County Jamboree before Bill bought it. And then,
Wow.
of course, played it some after Bill bought it. But Dad was, a musician. He had radio shows and stuff around that area.
I did
But
not
then
know.
he went to college and became a mechanical engineer and a machine tool dealer. But he loved music. He had a huge record collection. I guess, had, crazy as this sounds, like 2,000 records in the house.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a big, and he had guitars and piano and an organ and a couple steel guitars and all that. So I grew up very, very musical home.
Yeah.
But the Bean Blossom thing was the big deal, because we were going to shows. Dad went to shows all the time.
Uh-huh.
So the took us. I had one brother, so my mom and dad and I would go to shows all over the place, and so we saw everybody. So I probably saw Bill Monroe 25, 30 times, something like that, before there were festivals.
Wow.
Because he would do around Easter, he would have a show at the Brown County Jamboree barn, and then the same in the fall, he would have a show, and then there would be all different guests from the Grand Ole Opry. So I always loved bluegrass. My grandparents had all the Monroe 78s, so I've still
Oh
got them
wow.
over here in this is my
Fantastic.
studio uh, office here on this whole end of Duncan Manor, as it were. And so I've still got all those old 78s. So I thought everybody did. That
Right?
was the world I grew up in. And then my dad uh, wanted a country place, so we moved out in the country. So I actually grew up that part of my life, teenage years and all that, 1 mile from the Brown County line. So I grew up, I could walk right over the hill from where we lived to Stony Lonesome. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So that was the thing, and kind of the whole bluegrass thing coming into loving bluegrass and just being you know nothing but bluegrass going on in my head happened. I was really bitten by the banjo bug when I was maybe 12 or something like that. But I was playing music like my whole life. I was a 8-year-old steel guitar player, and I
Wow.
don't remember a time when I wasn't playing music. That's just what I did. If I got up and I started playing instruments around the house, and the way I got into like really into heavy duty Bill Monroe was I was really hooked on the banjo, and you know trying to play like Earl Scruggs and all that. And everybody that played the banjo, I was studying what they did. So actually, my dad, this is a great story about the fiddle. How we had a fiddle and all that, but like the fiddle I hadn't been bitten by the fiddle thing yet. And so the way the fiddle thing came about was actually we went to a Sunday show to see really to see Ralph Stanley, and
Uh-huh.
because I'd seen Bill Monroe 30 times, and so this would be probably 1970 somewhere in there, and so Stanley comes on, or maybe 71, and he's got the band with Roy Lee and Ricky and Keith and all that, and I mean they wrecked the crowd, and he encored about 2 or 3 times, and knowing Bill Monroe like I knew him so well much later, uh, so we see Ralph Stanley. It's Sunday evening. Monday's a school day, so Dad said, "You want to stay and see Bill?" And I said, "Man, we've seen him a bunch of times, and so I got to get up and go to school tomorrow and all that."
Right.
So we are literally walking out of the Brown County Jamboree barn, and we are almost to the door. We are back there by that old concession stand that people will remember, before the barn was torn down. Back there by the concession stand. If it had been 5 minutes later, this wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have seen
Uh-huh.
it. And we are almost to the door, and Monroe walks out on stage. And I probably did 500 shows of Bill Monroe. He never did this, but knowing him like I knew him later, he had just had a guest artist encore 3 times in his place,
Mhm.
and he walked right out on stage and opened with Uncle Pen. Never saw him do it before. We never did it. Never have. I don't have any live tapes of him doing that,
Wow.
but he was there to do business,
Yeah.
and it froze me in my tracks because Kenny Baker was playing the fiddle.
Uh-huh.
And I turned to my dad and I said, "My heavens, what is that?" And and of course my dad, dad goes, "Well, that's Uncle Pen. Heck, you've heard that 200 times." I said, "I ain't never heard it like that." He
Yeah.
said, "Well, you want to go back in and sit down?" And I said, "I must." And so we went back in inside. I turned around. We hadn't left the place, but we're clear back by the door. Went back, sat, and everybody was at Ralph's record table. So I sat right in the front row and stared at Kenny Baker for this entire show. And then so from that point till I was about 24, 25, I thought about nothing else but the fiddle. I played like 6 hours a day, every single day, and it was all Bill Monroe all the time. And I mean, naturally, because I was a professional musician, so I was like studying everybody.
Right.
But the Monroe thing, and I've told a lot of people this whenever I'm interviewed in any format, I truly believe this. If a person will study Bill Monroe and study everything that every fiddle player ever played on a Bill Monroe record, and study Bill Monroe's mandolin playing, you will never have to, as far as technique goes, you will be able to play anything that I've ever played on any record in Nashville, Tennessee. The technique was there. Bill had all the greatest fiddle players from the time that Howdy Forrester joined his band, and it's a shame he didn't get recorded with Bill Monroe. He's actually a very important bluegrass musician because everybody was listening on the radio.
Right.
And I want to tell just one little quick
Yeah,
thing
please.
about that because it's really important. Uh, so when I started getting around Benny Martin, uh, Chubby Wise, all the Red Taylor, Vassar, I would ask them, because I was fascinated about who did what.
Yeah.
When did you hear this? Where did In other words, if you say where did you get this,
Yeah.
not the best way to go about it.
Right.
But I was standing there with Benny one time, and I said, because I was really intrigued about, if you're in the key of G, da 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 da. I mean, that's just the way you play that
Yeah.
stuff. And so I asked Benny Martin one time. I said, "Hey, Benny," I said, who's the first person you ever heard do? And then I played basically the way you would play a little phrase out of Flint Hill Special, or Why Did You Wander, or Cabin in Carolina, you know, and the minute I did that, he goes, whoa, Duncan, that's Howdy Forrester. So
Wow.
Howdy's the guy that came up with all that. Now,
Thank you for
it's
sharing
real
that.
important. Howdy played on Earl's Breakdown. If you listen to Earl's Breakdown, there is what Benny and everybody else, all of us, since
Wow.
play that style of stuff, but it's all right there in Earl's Breakdown, and that's the way it started. So if you think about the evolution of bluegrass fiddle playing, Howdy Forrester and Chubby Wise, that's your linchpin right there. So that's where it started. Chubby, for the way that I play Footprints in the Snow today, or if I play Roosevelt, Kentucky today, I play that's the way it goes to
Yeah.
me.
Oh
And
yeah.
the whole time I was with Bill, so when I started playing with Bill Monroe, I'll jump ahead to that part. When I started playing with Bill Monroe, Kenny Baker had been gone about 6 months. And knowing Bill Monroe like I did, I knew not to come in playing like Kenny Baker, because that
Mm.
wound was fresh.
Yeah.
And I also knew that, he, Kenny had been there for like 16 years. And I knew, okay, so there's a whole huge vocabulary of Bill Monroe music from Chubby on, uh, through Vassar, Red Taylor, Charlie Klein, Gordon Terry, Bobby Hicks. And that's what I'm going to build what I'm doing with
Smart.
Bill Monroe on. So that's what I did. That's what I did with Bill Monroe. I was like 20, my late 20s by then. So I had already been playing Bill Monroe music that way. I viewed Bill Monroe, and I still do, Bill Monroe music as this big, broad continuum,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I could go on at quite some length about the incredible, because I get asked about it all the time, the incredible breadth of what the man did. And if we think about, this same guy did the quartets of That Home Above, and that are so sophisticated in the
Mhm.
40s. That same guy did On and On, and Memories of Mother and Dad, and I'm Blue, I'm Lonesome, all that. And then that same guy, I'll jump ahead, did Old Dangerfield, wrote Jerusalem Bridge, and all. There's nobody else that gets within 8 miles of that. The
Yeah.
width of that, the span of that. Uh, there's no contest. I mean, I could go into great detail about each one of those eras, but if you think about one guy that was the innovator and the center of all of that was going on, and I always go back to those quartets, because I mean, obviously I'm going back to Old Kentucky and all that stuff. That's all incredible stuff. But those quartets, that is like another planet of sophisticated ensemble playing. And you'll hear me talk about Bill Monroe music a lot using the term ensemble music, because that's what the man did. He always had a group, and it was a
Yeah.
group sound. And I often get asked about things about that, about the group. And one thing I always think about is, the second show we would always come out and open up with I'm on my way back to the old home. That was the second show opener. And there was a majesty to the way the rhythm sounded that
Yeah.
I've never heard another band have. I mean, we've all played it a
Yeah.
hundred times with different groups, but Bill Monroe and his Bluegrass Boys playing that song, the way he played rhythm and the way it felt when we did those songs with Bill, I've never heard anybody else exactly capture. There was just I don't know any other word for it, but like a majesty to the way that song sounded. And to me, that was it in a nutshell. Um, I've worked and traveled with Earl Scruggs for 7.5 years. And I would hear people ask Earl all the time, about playing with Bill. And, of course, everybody, looking for those little kernels of things about, when he wasn't playing with Bill and when they left and all that stuff. But Earl would tell me repeatedly, and I think this is really, really, really important. Like when the person would walk off, the interviewer would walk off or something like that. And Earl would always turn to me and say, when I think about, man, we had Bill and Lester and me and Chubby and all, he said, the thing about that band I've always remembered the most is we really played together. He said that every single time we played together. And when I hear those quartets, what I hear is together. They are blending themselves, and then the microphones just happen to be there. That's the way I feel about all that, and it's the way I recorded with him. We still recorded that way when I was with him. I mean, we stood right there, and the whole group would easily, and the mics and everything would fit in my studio room here. I mean, we stood, and this may be interesting to you too. The way we always stood was, if it was just, Bill and us, okay, I'll go from, okay. So if you're looking in at the control room, guitar would be on the left, then Bill, then Blake, and then behind, which banjo, behind Bill was Tater, bass, and then fiddle, me. I was like the leg of an L. So I'm standing 90 degrees from them. I am playing this way, and they are standing facing that way. So the control room would be here. They are facing the control room, and then I'm right here. But I could, if I would take my fiddle bow, I could touch Blake. I mean, that's how close we were. Wow. If we were recording with multiple fiddles, like Bobby Hicks and I did a lot of stuff with it, then we did the same configuration. We were just a little further back because two fiddles would be, more sound. But the bleed of all that coming through the mics all together is a big piece of that sound. A big part of that sound was, and of course, no headphones, no fixing nothing. I mean, you got what you got, because you're recording live as live gets. And I might make one interesting point about that that occurred to me pretty quickly from being around Bill day in and day out, and traveling around. We did a lot of stuff where he and I would go in a car to Bean Blossom, just me and him. Wow. And I always tell people I got to find out everything I ever wanted to know about Bill Monroe or from Bill Monroe just by talking to him, just getting him to talk. I mean, that's the reason I took that job. I mean, I wanted to play with Bill Monroe, but I just wanted to absorb what Bill Monroe was. And I did, and I still, I think about him every day. Every one of us who was a bluegrass boy, I mean, almost without exception, no matter what, and we've all gone on and done great things, and I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful that Bill had a big part of that. But when we get together, like if I get together with Dell, two of us, I always say wherever two or more are together, it's Bill Monroe. I mean, it's actually kind of an amazing thing to think about. His persona was that powerful that it never goes away. It's like Peter Rowan, as you know, from being around Peter, if I get around Peter, how are you doing, boy? It's good to see you. Oh, look at there. That is not a man's shoe. What is the matter with you? That is tearing you plumb down. I mean, you just immediately go to there because it's still that big his personality, was that big. And I think that had a lot to do with why we love his music so much and why he stayed. I've thought about this a lot. Most artists, he was a huge success in the 1940s. He was huge. He was big time huge. Most artists, okay, they get huge. They keep doing what made him huge. Right. You go see him again, it's that. They keep playing True Life Blues like he did it before. He didn't. You think of it, like I said, that guy in the 40s is doing Jerusalem Ridge and stuff by the by the early 70s. And to me, I just can't think of anybody else in our kind of music that thinking Southern blues based country music, whatever we call this whole thing. Nobody else, not even close. Can we say that about, because you usually carve out your thing, and then your thing, you kind of, it will evolve, you come up with new ways of doing your thing. But I mean, Jerusalem Bridge and then the 1940s, that's a big bunch of territory in between.
It's just
In
it's
between there.
astonishing. It's astonishing. What were a couple of the things that you learned from Bill, either playing in the band or just on the long car rides that kind of maybe helped helped complete your understanding about either your role in the band
Yep.
or your relationship with the music, that a couple of those
Yes.
things that kind of maybe really revolutionized, or just like the big aha
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
thing.
One thing, a huge thing, was just how he played rhythm in the
Yeah,
band.
yeah, let's talk about that.
How he played rhythm in the band. Uh, I mean, if I've often thought, if that's all he'd ever done on the mandolin, he would be an incredibly influential mandolin player,
Indeed.
coming up with the chop. But then
Yes.
the way he would use it when we would play, and again, I go back to on my way back to the old number some, and,
Yeah.
and his timing was absolutely flawless. When he was zoned in on what we were doing,
Yeah.
the way he would play rhythm, and the way he made an ensemble sound. I go back to that, how the way there are five of us,
Yeah.
the way we played and the way we sounded was because of the way he sounded. And you were always striving to play his music properly.
Yeah.
I guess that's another thing that and I knew that going in, but I
Mhm.
really wanted that. I really, really wanted that. I wanted to know, man, how does this tune really go? And so one of the things I did was I carried a tape recorder and
Ah.
on the bus, and I thought I'm going to get him to record uh, all the traditional fiddle tunes, just
Whoa.
like he would. How does this go? And he got so into that. And so I
Wow.
got that tape, somewhere around here. A couple, three of them. What's so cool is you can hear the bus motor in the background. Going up the mountains of North Carolina or something. But he really got into that, about somebody being interested. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, because now there'd be people lined up, out the end of my road to Nashville to get to hear him do that. But
Yeah.
as crazy as that sounds, a lot of people that had been around him, just weren't as interested in that part of it. But I thought, man, this guy, which one of the reasons that I always had wanted to work with him and just be around him with. He's a true source musician. There is like no almost Bill Monroe. And
Right.
then, well, yeah, here's Bill Monroe. He's the next evolutionist. No, 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 no. It's just
Yeah.
boom,
Yeah.
Bill Monroe. And so, but all those Arkansas Trail, Turkey in the Straw, all those tunes, Joe Clark, Fire on the Mountain, Katie Hill, well, the two that he would usually take great issue with. If I saw a fiddle player coming around and start playing with it, if they started playing Katie Hill or Patty on the Turnpike, me and Blake could just go hide, because of
Uh-oh.
the, oh, don't do it, because they were going to play it like, a prominent fiddle player had played it. And he already was like, I hear these fiddlers out here playing that. They've ruined those numbers right there. So
Wow.
Katie Hill, that was the first one. That's what started the whole thing. Was when I was with him, Art Wooten got sick.
Hmm.
They Somebody called, said, "Hey, do a song for Art Wooten,"
Hmm.
and he wanted to play Katie Hill because that's what he thought of. When he thought of Art Wooten, he thought of Katie Hill. That was what Art must have been. That must have been his big tune in the band.
Hmm.
And so I immediately, said, "Hey, play that, play that." So I watched how he played it, Bill,
Yeah.
and then I still play it like Bill, and everything that you could learn from Bill, like Katie Hill. I'll just give you, for instance,
Yeah.
um, most people when they play Katie Hill, da da, da 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 da. Ooh, no, it's
Mm.
da 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 da. It goes from the G to the B. Da da da
Ah,
da 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 da.
wow.
And then the other thing is in the bow. Everything with Bill. This is real important. Uh, Everything with Bill. If you and then when you listen to him play those tunes, he is trying his best in his head. He is hearing a great fiddler from a much earlier time.
Mm.
And he intentionally is not playing. No, 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 no.
Ah,
He's thinking of the, and so I still play like he played it because I tell you, it's cooler and it's a hipper thing because everybody, it's much easier to play every little piece colored in.
yeah.
But if you do that, every note in between. But if you do that, you lose all the rhythm.
Mm.
So everything about his deal on playing fiddle tunes was dance, dance, dance. Dance. It's all about if you can make people dance. Bob Wills, same exact way. If you can make people dance, you can make money. And I mean, it really is no more complicated than that. They came from an era where what was the deal? It was him and Uncle Pim playing for dances.
Yeah.
So, and he loved to dance. He was a professional dancer before he was a professional musician, as y'all know. But it was all about dance time.
Mm.
So everything he was doing was dance time. So that was one big thing I got from him, and a really big thing. I should fill that in a little more. Was that like Turkey in the Straw? He would play it, and da, 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 da. He did not play what a lot of people would consider notey,
Yeah.
But and the reason wasn't because he could do that,
Yeah.
but he didn't want to because he was getting the bow lick with his flat pick, which is really what Bill Monroe did. When it comes to playing fiddle tunes, so what did Bill Monroe do as far as fiddle tunes? He's playing like a really great fiddle player would have played. He had one big advantage too. He wasn't playing like fiddle players played in his era, so it made him unique. He wasn't playing like Howdy Forster would play a fiddle tune,
Yeah.
but Howdy could play like Bill played a fiddle tune, so he did
Oh.
because he was his grandfather played fiddle, so Howdy born like 1922, so his grandfather was like Bill's dad's age, like Baker the same way. They had learned to play from old time fiddle players, and there were old time fiddle players in Indiana. And so I knew all that going in. It gave me a huge advantage because I didn't come in there. If I hadn't have been around him all the time before I worked with him, it would have been a real hard job, I think, because um, this is another real important thing. And really, when I was with Bill Monroe, is when I learned this. I had, because I revered all of his recordings so much. I think it's a natural thing to just assume that he loved every single thing on every one of his recordings, and
Right.
he didn't.
Mm.
Because a recording is just nothing more than you play the song 5 times in a studio, 3 times in a studio. They pick one take of it, and then there's the record. So there were things on there that he might not like, or things he thought he didn't play that like I think it should go. But
Mm.
but it's on the record. So I also learned that to find out you had to get it from him.
Yeah.
And boy, he could tell you real quick if he liked it or not, because if you did something, and almost never, because I had really studied it, and I don't know how a person could have ever done it if they had. It would have just been a lot of conflict. Because I mean, he, I told him several times, because he would get mad. So I'm pretty mad. He'd
Mm.
get real mad sometimes if somebody came around him, like another, like a fiddle player or something, and they were playing Patty on the Turnpike in a way that like everybody was kind of playing it. If you think back to, we're talking 35 years ago when I worked with him, 36 years ago. Um, and he was already waiting for him, like, oh no, no, I'm going to stop
Mm.
that. And then they would they'd leave, because it'd get heavy. And he would turn around and to me and he'd say, they know better. And in other words, I told him, repeat it several times. I'd say, Bill, they don't know any better. He said, oh, yes, sir. They have to know better than that. I said, no, they don't. He said, everybody knows how Patty on the Turnpike ought to go. If a man don't know how, then I said, no, they don't. They do not. They think they're playing it like it goes. And he said, well, somebody needs to stop them. Yeah, yeah, somebody needs to stop him. So I mean, and he took that so seriously because to him, those tunes were like verses in the Bible or
Yeah,
something. It was
wow.
that serious. They go like this. And Blake and I, lots of times, we would ask him because here's one more thing about Bill. Uh, I always asked him questions, and and the best way to put this is, if he answered a question one time one way, that wasn't the last time I was going to ask it. I was going to bring it up again, maybe 10 times. And about that 10th time or the sixth time or the seventh time, boom, he would expound on it, by the eighth or 10th time. So we had been getting ready to go on stage, and somebody came around, fiddle player, and wanted to play some with him. And man, he would do that. And that's pretty cool too, if you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we kind of took it for granted because we were around him all the time and always had, like I say, ever since I was a kid. But to just be able to walk up and play with Bill and Earl, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so people wanted to do that. Guy come up, if he said Katie Hill or something, I'd try to get him on. Do Little Cabin Home on the Hill or something. But so it had been one of those episodes, and he was still pretty amped up, and he said, boy, that ain't the way that number goes right there. And I know, because I learned them from the man who wrote them.
Mm.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, it's exactly what I did. I said, who's that, Bill? And he said, Clayton McMitchin. And I thought,
Wow.
oh, okay. I said, did you know Clayton McMitchin? He said, I said, the brothers, which is, he would say that was his brothers. The brothers had some of the records and stuff of him. And so I also thought that was interesting because I'd heard him talk about learning stuff from his brother's records before.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't think of anybody earlier than Bill who would have been learning something from a record.
Right.
Just in passing out, I always thought that was interesting. I don't know. Bob Wills, I know he learned more from his dad and, people around. He was a couple years older than Bill, but Bill had learned those tunes from Clayton McMitchin records,
Wow.
hearing him on the radio. So Clayton McMitchin was his kind of mental go-to spot for the Katie Hill and all that stuff.
For the true gospel.
Yeah,
Bill told me that in the
that's right.
1920s he was playing along with records.
Yeah.
What's
Very.
that?
Bill told me that in the 1920s he was
Yeah.
playing along with records.
Yes, I believe that. And I see that would have been like Clayton, the Skillet Lickers.
Yeah,
You know.
because when I was a kid in the 1960s, he knew I was learning stuff from listening to records such as
Yeah.
his. He said, "Oh yeah, in the 1920s, it's like when I was a
Yeah.
kid, I was playing along with records."
Yeah, the brother. Yeah, he would say the brothers. The brothers had records. And of course when he moved to East Chicago, Indiana, the Sinclair Oil Refinery and all that. See, that's what they would have been doing for fun was listening to records. And so then that opens up a whole nother way of thinking about those tunes. But that was his go-to. And I heard him say Clayton, and he would always pronounce it the same way. He'd say Clayton McMitchin.
Mac mentioned.
Yeah, and yeah, so Clayton McMitchin, that was kind of his. That's where, but I asked him about Fiddle and Arthur, some, and he revered him as he would always say, "Oh man," he said, back in them early days, he said, "Man, you just about couldn't hardly touch him nowhere." He meant, nobody else could play as good
Yeah.
as. You probably aware of all this, but another transition that happened inside the Bill Monroe band was the longbow thing.
Yeah.
That was Monroe wanted that, but I because a lot of people know Carl Story played fiddle with him, during World War II, but he would have two fiddle players a lot. And with Chubby, when Chubby first started, Bill had another guy to play the old fiddle tunes, old timey, with the short bow, the kind of like Bill played mandolin a lot. But and Chubby didn't know any of those tunes. I mean, he didn't come up playing like that. Vassar, when Vassar came in the band, he told me he knew two instrumentals. He knew Orange Blossom Special and Wouldn't Boil the Cabbage Down, or Cindy, I think, is the other one. Rubber Dolly, Rubber Dolly, and Orange Blossom. That's the two tunes he knew, and everything else he knew, he was learning from Chubby Wise playing with Bill Monroe, and they were songs. They weren't fiddle tunes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Glenn, do you have a book in the work?
Oh man. Well, you know what? I've been asked that a lot, and I think what I'd like to do at some point is a video.
Yeah.
A long video, because I think telling it is far more compelling and has more information in it than when I write it down. Because when you write it down, it loses all the, oh, that's powerful right there, boy. And that's a big piece of it. I learned that from the man that wrote it.
Hearing you tell the stuff is huge. This is this is fantastic.
Oh,
hearing you tell this, it's just
thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Well, that's that. So to me, and I would love to get a world of this stuff to where people could watch it on video, because I think it's that important. And I mean, I was there. That's the reason I took that job. Was I was there. I wanted to learn, and I do know this, and I thought that going in, and everything every day with him reaffirmed it. And the same thing with my studio career, same way, was the deeper you get into, in our case, all of us, Bill Monroe, the deeper you get, the more there is there. I still go back and listen to Old Dangerfield or something like that. If I had, and it will come back to me again. Oh yeah, and that's something, because I've learned all because that album had not been out too long when I went to work with. So we were doing those tunes. We were Come Hither to Go Yonder. That's what he would do for his mandolin tune first show when I was with him. That was the first, that's what we would do. Second show, you do Rawhide, and then we do Requests and all that. But it was stuff off that album. And man, when that album came out, and I'm sure David, same thing. As much as I had been around Bill Monroe, I mean, that album was, I couldn't get over it. And I had heard that it was going on, and I'd heard that, Norman had played on some things and all that. And this is a pretty cool thing. My first realization that, okay, here we go. I went to Beam Blossom in about, I want to guess, it was probably 1981, but it could have been 1980. I mean, it's amazing to me. The different people that they can, like when I told the Kenny Baker story, man, they did the research and they said, oh, that was this date because that was the only time that Bill, I mean, they keep track of all this stuff. Yeah, the journals of all this stuff and all these books back here. But he came out on stage, and he had brought a cassette tape from Nashville, because when he recorded Last Days on Earth, naturally he just did it, him and Norman and a bass, that's it. And then they put all the strings and all that stuff on later. And man, I'd give $1,000 to have been sitting with Bill Monroe when he heard that, and all the the seagull sounds and all that stuff. And he was so blown away that when he came up from Nashville to Beam Blossom, I mean, he how you get just all in a hurry and everything. He made a beat, and he'd already talked to him about, can they play this through the sound system?
Wow.
At the festival, under the trees, back home again in Indiana, the thing above the stage back then, that old stage.
Yeah.
And so he just, I mean, he's literally like bringing the tapes under the arm almost, as you could kind of envision that, and brings it up to the sound people. Can you play this through the thing? And I don't remember who was on stage. I wish I did, because he just goes right out. I mean, it's not his part of the show or anything else. He just walks out on stage and said, I believe everybody needs to hear this. This is the most powerful thing I've ever heard in my life. Mm-hmm. And he said, I wrote this number, and he said, we played it. And then later they put all the fiddles and the big fiddles and all that, violins and cellos. And I love this part of the way he told the story. They put all the big fiddles and all that on it later, and they had the music all written out for them and what to play and everything. And he said, and I'm going to tell you, they told me that there was several of them had a tear in their eye, man. They did. They sure did. He's saying all this. And then, so he stands out on the stage by himself, and they play My Last Days on Earth like we all know. Whoa. Through those speakers. I cannot tell you the impact that had. I mean, whoa. To hear that when you ain't expecting to hear that, you're expecting to hear Roanoke type tune or a great tune, but not that, and it's one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen anybody do anywhere, anytime. And that's how he did that, I played the finished product through the sound system. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Well, Glen, I'm probably coming to Nashville to help Peter finish up his album in a couple of weeks, and would love to maybe get together. Maybe we could do some video. I don't know if we
absolutely.
I'd love to talk with you more about that, because your connection with the music and the culture is just, it's exciting. It's inspiring.
Thank you. Yes.
And I think it can lift people up, and in this time where people need to be lifted up.
I know. I feel the same way. I do. Yes, please do get a hold of me, and let me know all the particulars and everything, and I look forward to getting together with you. That'll be great.
This has been amazing. We've had a couple guests on here, but your like what's inside you, and like how deeply you feel it.
Oh yeah.
And how well, and how with the humor, and it's just it's amazing. It's charging everybody's batteries up here.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it means that much to me, and it still does. I always tell people, I said, I never got over Bill Monroe, and I think I say that about from all the bluegrass boys, that we never got over it. You never got over that. One other little thing about that I've often thought about, and this is really powerful to me, is because I spent so much time with Earl, and traveling lots with just Earl and Louise and me, because we would fly to LA to do television, fly to New York to do TV. We did a lot of stuff for just the three of us, and we talked all the time. We talked about Bill Monroe all the time, and one thing, this is, I think, like an important thought, is that it occurred to me. So when Earl came to work with Bill Monroe, and I tell that in the context of all the guys from the 40s and 50s, they never got over Bill Monroe. Lester Flatt never got over Bill Monroe. He never got over him. I mean, he still, when they patched up the thing, I mean, those guys, I mean, they worshiped Bill Monroe. They did. All the fiddlers in the 50s, Bobby Hicks, all of them. Kenny, after some time had gone by, he'd always call him the master and everything, But here's the point I want to make about the early guys. When Earl Scruggs took the job with Bill Monroe in 1945, Earl Scruggs had one pair of pants.
Wow.
He'd been in show business for a while, but all these guys, they came from rural agricultural upbringing, no lights, no electricity, poverty, really. I mean, to be blunt about it. And so Earl had one pair of dress pants. So to play the Opry, he would go, there was a little dry cleaners right down the alley from the Opry, and that's how this worked. And you walked in there to get your one pair of pants pressed, and you walked into a stall, and you threw the pants up over the top of the stall, and the seamstress type person would take because if you needed your cuffs fixed up or whatever on your pants, they would press the pants and then hand them back to you, and then he would have pressed pants and put on his hat, and they would go out and play the Grand Ole Opry. So that's, he didn't, what he had was literally the pants he was wearing, what he had in a little suitcase, and a banjo. And now Bill Monroe has Stetson hats, lots of it. He's got fancy clothes, lots of it. He doesn't have one pair of pants. He's got all kinds of suits and boots and jewelry and herringbone Martin guitars and a Gibson mandolins and he had a limousine and so if you think about that, the cultural huge thing of these guys are really from a poor background, and they come to Nashville and they're working with this guy that is bigger than life, and he has everything they want in life. They I wish I had a hat like that. I love that car. Even as a kid, and of course we were totally not that way. Like I said, Dad was a machine tool dealer, but still coming around the back of the barn and seeing those Cadillacs with the Tennessee license plates on it is like, I want to be there.
Yeah.
I want to be there. I want to be that.
Yeah.
I want the Cadillac with the Tennessee tags, not the Lincoln with the Indiana tag. No. There's just that mystique, So a lot of it was that. And not only that, he could sing higher than everybody else. He could play faster than anybody else. Right. He could outdo him at anything or die trying.
Yeah.
That's one thing about him. I don't care what it was. He's gonna do everything in his power to best the competition. He was that focused on being competitive because of his brothers and all that. But just because that's what he had in him. Yeah. He had that in him. You're born with that. He was born with the drive to, I'm going to show everybody I can do this better than they can do it. And that was a driving force in the whole rest of his life and his career. And I think that's one of the reasons those songs kept coming in the 80s and 90s, and my time with him in the 80s and stuff. He's trying to write a new song every time he got the mandolin out of the case. Yeah. There's all kinds of, you hear the live tunes of us playing him. He literally get it out of the case, and we'd start writing it backstage, walk right out on stage and play it, because he was just that driven to still be that guy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so inspiring to listen to you talk about it. And
cool.
Like that Baltimore breakdown. I
yeah.
Just reading it, like he'd written it that day, and you just fiddled the crap out of it. I just learned it. I was like, oh my gosh, they were just on fire.
Oh, thanks. Well, you could kind of tell from that. I think that it was kind of like, when you were around that and you were in that, you were all the way in, those tunes were coming out just like that. And the thing I love about that recording more than anything else is to hear Bill's reaction. That's my favorite. And boy, that is the real Bill Monroe. Everybody should listen to that recording and listen to it 2 or 3 times and catch what he's saying, because he actually says a couple things in there that are like pretty important. It's almost like what he does like about it, he says. And then he says, well, I think you can even dance to it. And then you can tell he hits a few dance steps on it. That's the showman. Right. But my favorite thing about that is he loved that as with every fiber of his being. He loved that, and he could almost not stand still. Well, he couldn't stand still. If you started playing that kind of stuff, or if we were really on and playing Sally Gooden, his feet would not stand still. He had that was in him. So that part was not the show. That was really just in him that much. Yep.
The music was moving him, and his music was moving us. Jeepers.
Still, after all this time, man, it's like, yeah. And it'll be that way. I always knew that, but I'm so happy for him that he's 10 times bigger than he was. He passed, like we all know, 25 years ago. And he's so much bigger now than he ever was. And it's just going to be that way. There will come a point when people will just be amazed that you even knew Bill Monroe. You know, I mean, it's that the legendary aspect of it
Yeah.
continues to grow because all of the people, you know, who were contemporaries, you know, Earl was the last one to pass, you know, from the band, you know, that band. And then, you know, Mac was about the last one who had played with him in any part of the 1940s. So I mean, now you're up to, you know, I guess Sonny Osborne, you know, 52. You know, he played with him in 52, and then Hicks started in 53. They're they're like next, you know, in order. So there's nobody left from the 40s, and the guys from the 50s, you know, fewer all the time, and then you know some of the guys like you know the fiddle thing. Um, Kenny was there for a long time. You know, he was there for 16 years all at one whack, and then, you know, like really kind of three other stretches, 63 and then 55, 56, and then the 58 where they did Scotland and Panhandle Country. But so I guess about four other times. And I'm sure because Bill's thing was, you know, I need a fiddle player. So then there's also all the times when, well, I'm going to Kentucky, and Bill had that, you know, they talk about the black book. He had it. It stayed right in his pocket inside of his suit coat. And, you know, fiddle players, guitar players, banjo players, bass players, still, you know, still. In fact, I'll tell you one quick funny story about that. Jimmy D. Brock, you know, playing with the Osborne brothers. When I started with them, he was playing, and his dad was Jim Brock, you know, Jim and Jesse fiddle player. And so we all shared dressing room number two at the Opry, you know. And every time we would come in, if we Friday night and Saturday night would be like 6 months apart, could have been, because he would ask him on Friday, he would ask him on Saturday. You know, we'd come in and he'd look around and see him, and Brock would go, "How you doing tonight, Bill?" And Bill'd say, "Oh, I'm doing fine, sir. How are you?" And he'd go, "How's your father?" and I told Brock, I said, "Man, you know what that is?" I said, "He's always keeping track of those fiddle players.
Right.
You know, always keeping track. How's your father doing?" Every time, you know, "What's your father doing these days?" You know, yeah. Yeah. Keeping track of the fiddlers.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it's it's just amazing to your recall with all this and the passion that you're
Oh
sharing
yeah. Yeah,
all
well, I
this with
appreciate that.
is
Yeah.
is
Well,
is
I love it that much. You know, I often say the thing I'm most thankful for of anything in music is that I actually love it more now than I ever had.
wow. It's
And man, I'm thankful for that, you know, that it, because again, as you go along, you can still keep getting deeper and deeper. And that's the fun. To me,
yeah.
the deeper and deeper is the fun. It's a reward unto itself. It more than any other piece of it, that's the fun, is finding more stuff. And there's more stuff and there's more stuff. And you're getting down, you know, the deep, and there is no end to it, you know. And that's one thing Bill and I, uh, we got along great because of that, you know, was that the deeper that you would play, well, he'd get right down in there with you. He, boy, the rhythm, you know, he's laying the rhythm, even in the bus, you know, he's laying the rhythm in there and he's talking to you about it. That's it. That's it. Oh, that's it right there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's boy. Now you're taking it right on back there. That's yes, sir. That people ain't playing like that no more. You know, yes, sir. You get so you learn, and he wasn't just hyping you. That wasn't his deal. He was pointing out, oh, yes, yes, oh yes, 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 you know. And
Telling you
so
how
at
to
some
own it.
point we'll talk about this is I call it symmetrical playing, and he didn't, of course, call it that, but I had not been with him too long, and we're playing some tune, me and him in the bus, and he stops and he goes, "You know how to make it go in a circle, don't you?" And
Hmm.
I said, "Yeah." And it's what I call symmetrical playing,
Wow.
and it's like a whole. We could do a whole thing on that, but
Maybe we could
um,
get into that in Nashville. That sounds very
yeah,
interesting.
we will because it's a big deal. And I tell you what, it showed me once again all these, you know, there ain't, you count them on one hand, but I mean greatness like a Bill Monroe and Earl Scruggs, that level of greatness, uh, they do know what they're doing. You know, I mean, there is, you know, kind of two schools of thought always on, you know, well, they just, you know, kind of like a genius. Well, yeah, they are, but, and, you know, they don't, No, 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 no. They know exactly what they're doing, how and why. And, they might not be able to explain it in a way that's, like, well, I slide on my 4-string like this, or I did it for this reason, or might even be a little bit of reluctance to just, this is mine, and
the secrets.
yeah, but he would point it out always. And boy, when he said that, and it was just me and him, and I thought that answers every question I ever wanted to know about. Oh no, no, he knows exactly what he's doing, because I knew what he meant, because I was doing it in the song. What you play over here determines what you play over there. What you play, and you could keep cutting those into smaller segments. But like if you take a just take a verse of a tune, a verse of a fiddle tune or something, cut it into maybe 8 pieces. This 4 determines how you phrase this 4 determines how you phrase that 4. And if you don't do that, it's tearing your number plumb down. It's really holding you back. It's not helping your number at all. But if you do know how to do it, and he knew how to do it, and I had figured that out about his playing, but that's why he does that. One other little piece, about Bill too, is about, when you analyze him and listen to him, I always think too, from being around him all the time, he's taken his solos after he's been standing there playing rhythm for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I've often thought that actually makes him even more amazing, or it bumps him up 4 or 5 notches to me, because in today's world we could play rhythm all the way through, and then he could sit there and play solos for 20 minutes, but everything he ever played, he had to stand there, sing tenor, play rhythm, keep it all together, keep the whole band together, and then play his solo. And so and his solo was usually last, so he'd had to play rhythm a lot. And then now step up there and be precise and all that. I'll mention one other little thing about that is interesting to me. And Peter, one of my favorite bands he ever had, and I mean, like top 5 ever, is the Peter and Richard and Lamar and James band. That band, and I've told Richard 100 times, but his backup on the Bluegrass Time album, that's as good as you can play a fiddle.
Yes, I'm with you.
There's no way you can play better. You could play different, and other guys have, Kenny, me, whoever, but you can't play better than that. You can't play better than Chubby. It's just different. And there's an interesting thing, which brings me to how Bill also had the fact that he was in Nashville and an Opry act and was always on a major label here. That helped him a ton on the sound quality. And the thing I'm thinking of is, if you think about his solo on Pretty Fair Maiden in the Garden, and next time you listen to it, you can hear that engineer, because what he's having to do, he's got the mandolin right up here, live mics. And so when he plays his mandolin break, he might be playing it in the vocal mic, or they have a mic for him here. Don't know, haven't seen the picture, but what you will hear is his mandolins start getting louder before the break. And an engineer is having to make that call on the fly every time. And it's a pretty big deal, when you go back and listen to those. But that's one that struck me, that you can hear that mandolin starts getting louder right before his break. And that's what the engineers were doing when we would record. They're listening for, okay, now Glen's backup is going to be at this level, and then his solo is going to be at this level. Okay, now when we run his level up, well, now the band starts to get out of whack sounding. So they figured all that out, because they're the best. You've got the best in the world here, the engineers. But when you go back and listen to his records from about the 60s on, there's some really interesting stuff in that thing. Like listen to his solo, and then listen, maybe back 10 seconds before, and hear how the level, what they're doing. and it's always a good call. The
Yeah.
call they make is it's kind of like all the alternate take stuff that we've all got, you know, of all the things.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed by, man, they made the right call
Yeah.
time after time. You know, Rawhide, you know,
Right.
the fiddle break is only up, you know, the way we all play Rawhide now. He only did that on one take. Well, that's the take.
Yeah.
And one other thing about the alternate takes, I said my whole life, Uncle Pen, the 1950 cut of Uncle Pen is so perfect. There is no way in the world that is not a first take. There's no way in the world. They could have cut that song 50 times and never captured what is in that song. And sure enough, there ain't no alternate takes on Uncle Pen.
That's the one.
That's it.
He was ready for that one.
Yeah, they were ready for that. That's right. Had the man there to do it too. Red Taylor, perfect for that style. You know, that was his deal. Yeah. You know, the long bow bit, you know, and there's, for any fiddle player, man, that's a college education in how to use a bow. Uncle Pen, 1950. That's how you do it, you know, and if you can do that and do it smooth like he did, man, you can play the fiddle real good.
Well, speaking of playing the fiddle, I put Glen's website, glenduncan.com, and then also the storefront.htm. You can have a look at Glen's albums for sale, and would invite everyone to grab a couple off there.
Cool.
And man, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have enjoyed this immensely.
This is amazing.
I wanted to say this was priceless. Hearing you, this was like huge. This is way worth more. This is worth $1,000. You're talking about spending $1,000.
Oh my goodness!
What you have said tonight is worth way over. Is priceless. And you know, I loved you when I first met you.
Yes, sir. I love you too.
You've been a super great guy, super talented. When you joined the Bluegrass Boys, of course, Bill already knew you, and I said, "Oh, you're going to love this guy." Talking about you, and he said, "Oh yeah, I already do."
That's
you were
great.
But I didn't realize at the time that Bill had known you since childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I said, "Oh, you're going to love this guy."
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh yeah, I already do." But he thought you were very special.
Well, I appreciate that so much. I do.
Everything you said tonight it is exactly what I've been trying to tell people. Everything you said, like the one thing you said about how Bill, what he chose to play, he could play a whole lot more, but chose not to. And when we got silly with each other, he could play all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And another thing you said was that the danceability and the single organism, the ensemble thing.
Yes.
And I always say to people that Bill was the musical director and he was the conductor visually.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He led the group with his motion.
Yeah. Oh, so true.
And he was the conductor of the group. So you explained the whole thing very well. And
thank you.
Yeah, that was So it's like, oh my God, this guy's talking about all these things I try to explain, but I can't explain as well as Glen does.
Oh man, thank you, David.
You got to do a video. Go see Chris. He's really good at video production.
I'm going to do it.
Spend some time with Chris and let him record you.
I'm going to do
hours. We need hours of this.
I am going to do it. We'll start right back there with Howdy Forrester and just go right up to 1996. Every step of the way. Every step of the way.
I'm excited about that, Glen.
I am too.
And I don't know if you remember that group I used to play with, the Johnson Mountain Boys, but we did a lot of the same shows with you.
Yes, sir.
Everybody in the group, we always thought you were a fantastic guy and
I appreciate that so much.
Talent.
I appreciate. You know, I remember the first time we met. The first time that we worked together on a festival, I was with Larry Sparks, and it was the Bluegrass Unlimited Festival in Maryland, or I think that's the first time we were on
Indian Springs.
I bet that's it.
Like 1979, I believe.
Yeah. I was with Larry in 78, 79 both. Yeah, that's when it would have been, you know. Yeah. Well, it was so great to meet you and to see somebody playing like I like to hear somebody play a mandolin. You know, I mean, because people weren't doing that back then. And that sounds so funny, you know, in 2021, but it just wasn't like it is now. You know, I'm so thankful now, you know, that so many people are, but people didn't people didn't do it. People didn't. There
You know,
was.
when I was doing it back in the '70s, it wasn't the cool way to play anymore.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I so know. And of course, I was just the opposite. I wanted that. I wanted that. Because and you could tell there was more there than with what people were doing, playing other ways of playing. And I'll tell you a quick story about that, just real quickly. And he's passed away now, but great musician, session musician. I probably did literally 1,000 sessions with, named Billy Joe Walker Jr. And he played on all kinds of stuff, every kind of music you can imagine. He could do anything with an acoustic guitar. And I didn't know when I first started working with him that he had actually grown up around Red Hayes, the fiddle player. It's on some of Bill's stuff, and he wrote "Satisfied Mind" and a bunch of stuff like that. And it's great, like Ray Price style fiddle player. But the story about this is, so Billy Joe had been around. Billy Joe Walker had been around, really great fiddle playing his whole growing up period, and because he's from Texas. And so back in this era, this is probably the '80s, at the Music Mill, and back then they would put like me and him in the same booth. Some of the George Strait set is the same way. Me and the bass player, acoustic, if it's an acoustic, but we're in the same booth. So if the bass player needs to fix something, we both have to play it again. But I mean, that's just, you did what you did. But the point of this story is, so he and I would, so you're sitting there in a booth with somebody for 4 days in a row all day. And so he'd sit there, while somebody else is doing something, and he was asking me about Bill Monroe. And so this guy has been around every kind of great musician, you name it, Ray Charles, Sinatra, you name it. And so I started telling him about how Bill played and all that. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll show you. And so I played some fiddle tune, maybe not, I don't even know what it would have been. And I said, but now Bill played it like this. And so I played same tune, just a snippet, and I played it on the fiddle like Bill was playing it on the mandolin, but I was playing it on the fiddle. That's all I did. I played, okay, here's, kind of like everybody else plays it, now here's the Bill Monroe way of playing it. And Billy just sitting there, and as soon as I played the Bill Monroe thing, he goes, oh man, he said, that's way better than the other. And he said, it's way deeper. He said, there's a lot more there than there is with the other way of playing. He said, it's not even the same thing. He said, there's stuff in the, and I know what he means. It's what we're talking about. It's the stuff down in there. It's the stuff Bill would do that's down in there, and he heard it. And every time he played, that's what he was trying to do when he played, and we say trying to do because he was always getting further down in there too. Yeah. That's the cool part about it.
That's right. That's right.
That's great, man.
Well, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much, Glenn.
Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you when you get to town down here.
Yes, sir. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great to see you, David. All right. Bye-bye.
See you, Glenn. Oh, man. Tremendous. Yeah.
That was amazing.
I'm with you there. It's like, like, wow.
How much is that information, hearing that stuff, how much is that worth? I would have paid $1,000 to hear him say all that stuff.
That's just,
if I had $1,000. I don't have $1,000, but man, that was huge.
That's a huge transmission and a big empowerment from, one of the guys that's, so obviously just like through and through resonant with, talk about somebody who gets it, and then somebody who, some people can get it, and then some people can give it, and he just gave it. He just gave it.
And he is able to get across the way Monroe was. It's really hard to put into words how Monroe, it's like, but it's like when Glenn was talking, I felt like, okay, I'm back in the room. I'm starting to feel that Monroe thing going on here, because he was verbalizing all the quirks and things. Exactly right. Of course, when he speaks like Bill, nobody does a better job of imitating Bill. Probably because Glenn's from the same part of the planet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
he knows how to talk that way, whether it's Bill or some other old guy from the same part of, you know, Indiana.
Oh my gosh. Mind blown. So grateful for all that.